And next to read is Tim Harrison. Tim was treasurer for South for many years and is a poet very much in his own right with quite a lot of poems in South.
Quite a few poems in South. Tony, in actual fact, lived in many countries of the world when he was young. His father died when he was 2. He lived in New Guinea, Hong Kong, Manila and Sydney. Now, the first poem which I'm going to read, it's called Where I Come From. I told you that because it kind of gives an insight into the poem. Where I come from. Once, so long ago, I can only remember it in a grey haze. There was a place like a jigsaw with half the pieces missing. A place with only grandparents and strangers and faceless children in sailor suits and crawling things that ate away the furniture so that it had to be stood in bowls of water. And sleep was inside nets. And when it rained, it was like emptying endless sacks of dried peas onto a tin drum. And it was always hot, and night fell like a dropped brick. But that was not home. Home, when finally I came to it overseas, was a packed suitcase, railway carriages without return tickets, boarding houses and landladies. Home was somewhere my parents would not stay, but I must. A place of buses and timetables and packing up again, passengers' luggage in advance, a bed in a corner of a semi-basement behind a screen, and school was somewhere where you were never lonely. The next poem, this got to me because of the darkness element of it. I think you can see the darkness. It's slightly shorter than the other one. It's called Marching. I tell you, I heard marching, the stamp of feet on tarmac, carried faintly on the black night air, just as the sounds of branch-line trains carry across the valley when the breeze is right. And a chill scrawled across my skin, though it was summer. And I turned to you for support, but you were sleeping. So I rose and ran to the window, as if expecting the confirmation of sirens, but there was nothing except a red glow over the distant town and the baleful moon casting a twisted pall of blind shadows in the orchard. Come back to bed, you said. It's all right now.
Thank you, Tim. Anne Clegg, as you heard, has worked doing the typesetting for South. Without Anne, there wouldn't be a magazine. It's as simple as that. And Anne is sort of in between. Ray and Tim represent 2 of the people from the previous management team. Anne has stayed on and is still with us. Anne Clegg.
I'm hoping to get good at it one day. I do admire Tony's work. My first experience with his poetry was as a selector, which I reckon to be a great honour, along with Richard, Tim and Jenny. And although Jenny was in Cornwall then, Richard was closer, so we managed. And the poem that one of the poems that we chose, I've never come across Tony's work. I actually thought had been written by a woman. It was so sensitive, and of course that was a bit of a sexist thing to think, but I just love this poem. It's called A Small Sherry Glass. I open the cupboard door, remove a box, and the glass tumbles onto the worktop, shivers to pieces. And she's 7, the first to know who Father Christmas is, sees no reason why Mum and Dad should have no stockings. And I'm opening mine, and there among sweets and fruit and knickknacks, a set of sherry tumblers. a fine gold band around each rim, scarlet huntsmen, chestnut horses, hounds, each seen different, but how? From jumble sales, where value could be had for a few pennies, and I could have filled them all. I'm angry now, angry with my carelessness, as I sweep up fragments of memory, the glass cutting me deeper than I thought possible. The next time I noticed a poem by Tony was quite different, and I thought it displayed his really, difficult to say, workmanship, intellect. It's a very clever poem, and also a very, very good one. Rite of passage. The moon goes round the earth in an ellipse, and in its time makes many monthly trips. The earth and moon and sun are passing ships, which now and then align. Moon shadow clips the earth, and where it does, day slowly slips from sight. Life stops. An eerie darkness grips wild living things with fear, and each heart skips a beat. The sun's rim flares with fiery whips, and throats go dry as some with hollow quips dismiss their fears with signs on their lips, as in their souls they fear apocalypse. They wait and watch, the perspiration drips. Day fights with night, and then the balance tips as colours glow, the end of the eclipse.
Thank you. Chrissie Williams is one of the current team. Chrissie is the person who currently keeps the website going, and I can thoroughly recommend it if you haven't visited South's website, www.southpoetry.org. Thank you, Chrissie.
Those of us who were at Tony's funeral got an idea of the breadth of the man. For those of you who didn't know, he had a long career working in polymers and paints. He was sort of at heart a scientist, and at soul a mystic and a philosopher. And I think that is in some of his poetry, along with his his love of language. So with all those things, I've chosen two poems just to illustrate the size of Tony Turner. The first one is called The Myth of Life. And in the days of enlightenment, a myth was created, how in the beginning was the bang, and the bang made the sun and stars, earth and moon, and the energy and the chemistry. And the energy combined with the chemistry to produce life. And life was fruitful, and in time covered the earth with creatures. And life ruled the creatures with a law called natural selection. And the law proclaimed that man would have dominion under life and in life. But man asked, what comes after life? And the law did not tell him. And man looked at life and his fellow men and thought, there must be something after this. But men did not return to tell him, and those few who claimed to do so he did not believe. And he looked around him and saw that the law was unjust, that evil prospered, that the meek inherited nothing. And so some devised a myth that there was nothing after life, that life was the beginning and the end, the trial and the purpose, and some were content. But many were desolate and could not accept it, which was just as well, as it was only a myth. And the next one is called The Theory of Everything. And I think it shows perhaps a slightly different slant. And you'll have to excuse my voice, I'm a bit like Kitty. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I shall keep speaking anyway. The theory of everything. The universe is mostly empty space, the atom's void round which electrons race. Electrons go right through a metal foil, and stars are only gases on the boil. And mass is really energy held tight while energy is coiled in strings of light. Now time depends upon your point of view, so in the 10th dimension, all is new. The world is just an insubstantial dream, and things are not as solid as they seem. Why should a being, cleverer by far, love artifacts, as fragile as we are? So, hold me close as north winds fill with snow, for time is short, and that is all we know.
And she did very well because she was really concerned that her voice would give out. It didn't manage very well. Chrissie still is a member of Metroland Poets, and Tony Turner was very closely associated with Metroland Poets and also with Thames Poets, which are based more around the sort of Maidenhead area. Andrew Curtis, who is now Art Treasurer, is going to read a couple of poems of Tony's and is a member of both of those poetry groups, Thames Poets and Metroland.
Thank you, Patrick. Since meeting Tony, I don't know, about 12, 15 years ago, at the poetry readings we both used to attend at the Swan Theatre at Wickham, I've come to love both the man and his poetry. And I'd like to read two short poems which reflect, I think, his subtle sense of humour. The first one's called Saved. I went to the doctor. Save Mrs. Jones, I begged. He studied her illness, diagnosed her condition, prescribed his best remedy, but Mrs. Jones died. I sought the priest. Save Mrs. Jones, I pleaded. He visited her deathbed, prayed from his heart, gave her the last rites. Who knows if Mrs. Jones is saved? I sat at my computer. Save Mrs. Jones, I requested. The computer replied, Mrs. Jones is saved. At the Oval. I'm sitting in a cold wind at the Oval. I'm wrapped in several sweaters and a coat. A black cloud threatens us with something evil. I think I've got a tickle in my throat. The players are like old folks on an outing. The terraces are full of empty seats. The scoreboard is as static as a painting. The disused umpires stand there in their sheets. This loveliest summer game is most at home on sun-bathed village greens by new-mown hay. What brought me to this place of steel and stone? And can this really be the month of May?
Andrew's reading ends the first half of the programme. We'd now like to invite you to have some wine and some nibbles and to make the opportunity, or take the opportunity, of talking to one another and finding out about your interests and what brings you together with South. We'll restart in, says here, 8:50, probably a little bit before then. I'll give you a shout.